Good afternoon, ladies. I see some familiar faces. I see a lot I don't know. My name is Gina Ellis. Hi. I know you. Very quickly, I'm just going to give you a short intro into my life. I've been married since 1979 to Jerry Ellis. We are the parents of 9 children, 4 biological and 5 that God just blessed us with and I didn't have to give birth to. We are also the proud grandparents of Rossi, Chloe, Atley, Carter, Mocha, and Emerson, and number 7 is due this Mother's Day. It's a surprise. She does things the old-fashioned way. We live in very rural Mount Vernon, out in the middle of nowhere, on my husband's great-grandparents' home place that they purchased the land in 1897 for $252. 50 acres. Jerry and I are both employed by the Mount Vernon First United Methodist Church. I recently, as of last Sunday, moved to the director of children's ministry, and he took my former position as the custodian of the church, which if you want to do something that keeps you humble, clean toilets. It'll do it. We have had a very blessed life. I've been thinking about what I wanted to say to you today for months. I've written this a dozen times in my head. I started it on my laptop 3 times, and I lost the entire transcript once. It appeared Satan was going to win, even today. I thought I was one of those speakers who had a problem. I walked out and had a flat tire. So I had to hurriedly call and try to find another way to get here. But as I sat down at my desk yesterday morning, the words for this just flowed. And I don't know about you all, but when I'm struggling with something that God has given me, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and then suddenly the task becomes so easy, I know then that my God has won the fight. And I can say, not today, Satan. I must admit, I laughed a little bit, and then I did this little dance, but I kept the dance in my head because nobody wants to see all this dancing. It's not a good sight. Nobody wants to see that. But to get back to what I wanted to say to you all today, I'm going to be talking from okay, there we go. Thank you, Tammy. Talking to you, and I'm going to use this scripture just because it is very special to me. Galatians chapter 6, verses 9 and 10 say, "So let's not allow ourselves to get fatigued doing good. At the right time, we will harvest a good crop if we don't give up or quit. Right now, therefore, every time we get the chance, let us work for the benefit of all, starting with the people closest to us in the community of faith." That verse jumped at me when I was looking for scripture that spoke to what I wanted to share with you all today. Mine and Jerry's lives changed drastically in 2014 when we were invited to attend, back up. Thank you. When we were invited to attend a Walk to Emmaus weekend. If you're not familiar with the walk, it's an ecumenical journey with Christ. It's an experience of Christian spiritual renewal and formation where you have an opportunity to meet Jesus Christ in new ways as God's grace and love and mercy is acted out and revealed to you through other believers. For us, it was a life-changing event. Men go one weekend, women go the next weekend. Jerry and I had struggled through some difficult times in our marriage throughout the years, and though we had won battles, there was still a war being fought in our marriage and our home. When we were invited, I thought, okay, this sounds like a really great time for us to solidify our marriage commitment and keep Satan out of our house and maybe kick him to the curb. So I convinced him to do it. I, looked at him real lovingly and in a real whiny voice said, "I really want to do this. It'll be good for both of us." He reluctantly agreed, and we went. He came home all excited and told me how God had asked him to do something. He didn't know what, but he knew that God had a task for him, and he had written God a blank check, signed his name at the bottom, and promised God he would do whatever he was asked to do. It scared me to death because I thought he's going to be called to preach, and I am not pastor's wife material. Because I'm kind of like Nikki, I can be very inappropriate. So it was a little scary. Actually, it scared me to death. But I was the one that had pushed for this, so I acted like it was just great, and I went off to my weekend, and I had a great time. There were speakers that talked about God's grace in their life. They talked about their purposes in life, where they found what they were supposed to do, and they were just so blessed. And, I ate some good food. I'm all about the eating. And I made some new friends. So I thought, this is great. But I didn't change. Nothing changed in me. I already had a good relationship with Christ. Now, this is where I need to back up for just a second and explain something to you about me. I'm terrified of heights. Like petrified. He got me on the roof one time. I couldn't get off. It was ugly. I'm just as afraid of deep water. When I get in the water, which I love, but when I get there, if it gets up around my chest, I panic, I can't breathe. So I am like, panic attack, can't move, feel paralyzed, afraid of heights and deep water. Now for years, Jerry had been going to mission trips in the United States, and a couple of years before this walk, he started going to Haiti. You gotta fly to get to Haiti, really high, and you're flying over water. He would come home with pictures of children hanging on him and pictures of this island that are just gorgeous. That's my back porch view when I moved to Haiti. And he would tell me how awesome these people were and how God was doing such great things there and how he could see God in these people. And it all sounded really great, even interesting, but nope, no way. You're not going to get me on a plane to fly over a lot of water. I had visions of Tom Hanks in Castaway. That was what I thought, so no way. That would be me. God's going to get me up real high just to drop me a long way to drown. And I wasn't going. But God had another plan. As I stood in front of a microphone at the Emmaus Walk closing ceremony, I heard someone say, "You need to tell us what you got out of this weekend and what you're going to do with it." Okay, I didn't get anything. Gained a pound, Then I stood in front of a microphone and I heard the words, "We need to have another fundraiser. I have to go to Haiti with you, Jerry." My next coherent thought was, who the heck said that? So there we were. Jerry had promised God he'd do something. He didn't know what. And I'd told a room full, which I swear it looked like there were 5,000 people in that room. I learned later there was maybe 150, about like this, but it looked like 5,000. I had told all those people I was going to go to Haiti. Satan immediately began to throw some darts at both of us. Is this what I'm supposed to do? Or is it that? Or is it this? I'm not smart enough to do that. I can't talk in front of people. That was me. I can't get on a plane. I'm too fat. I can't walk up mountains. I'm not getting on that plane. And every day there was another reason for both of us to say, nah, not today. Not going to do that. But here's the great part. Our Father is so loving and he is so patient. No matter how many doubts we had, he kept nudging. And Desiree pointed out today to me, sometimes he really was dragging. He was dragging me, and I was fighting tooth and toenail not to go. Eventually, I lost 75 pounds. I know that I'm still kind of chunky, but that was a huge thing, and I've kept it off 4 years. Thank you. I was able to get on a plane. I flew over the ocean. I flew over a sea, and I flew over the Gulf of Mexico. I walked up and down mountains, and you know what? I found God. He was in the people of Haiti. I went praying that God would use me to bless them. He used them to bless me, and I found God right there. That was a blind man's house who had nothing. He had nothing, but the joy and the grace and mercy of God was in that little place. It was just abundant. Okay, so that's part of my story. Jerry's took a little longer. Several times a week I would ask him, so has he told you yet? What are you supposed to be doing? Come on, tell me. And some of you do know my husband. You've seen he wears bib overalls. Somewhere in Haiti there's 3 people walking around in bib overalls because he leaves a pair every other year. So it's kind of funny. But Jerry is very patient, and he don't get in too big a hurry about anything. And when I would bug him about, what's he told you yet? What are you doing? He would just look at me and just very slowly reply, no, not yet. I'm still waiting. He'll tell me when it's time. Then one Palm Sunday in 2015, we heard about a little Asian girl that had previously came to our church with what we thought was her foster mother. They hadn't been in quite some time, and we'd lost track of her. And another church member ran into the lady, the woman, at a store, and when she asked about the little Asian girl, the woman told her that she was a really bad kid. She had ran away, and she was living with her boyfriend and in all kinds of trouble. So the member was asking all of us to pray for her. And we got in our van and we started home, and Jerry said, do you believe that story about that little girl? And I answered, no, I don't. His reply was, if I could find her, we would go get her and we'd give her a home. Something bad could happen to her. So we began to look for her. We tried several things with no luck. And then on Wednesday, same week, guys, this is a miracle. This is how God works. Palm Sunday, we hear about her. Wednesday at lunch, I'm with my coworkers at the church where I work. I began telling them about this girl and about how we were looking for her. A church member who's an attorney and a foster parent came into the church for another matter. And I thought, hey, maybe she knows something that I don't know, and she'll know where kids that age out of the system go. So I told her about it. She asked me a few questions, and then she told me some places to call, and then she said, what are you going to say when you call these places? I said, I'm going to tell them who I am, where I work, I'll offer references, and then I'm going to say, I'm looking for a little Asian girl named Susanna. She's about this tall. She has long black hair, glasses, and very pretty. She immediately looked at me and very urgently replied, you need to go to Lifeboat, the homeless shelter. Like right now, you need to go, you need to call them. I love to cook, so she said, or you need to cook them supper tonight. You need to go there now. I went upstairs, got my cell phone out, I called. And on that Good Friday, we heard about her on Palm Sunday, had no clue where she was. On Good Friday, we moved her into our home. One of the 5 best days of my life to that day, because I had 4 other kids. We told her she would now be our daughter, and we would help her go to school, and if she ever married, we would pay for a wedding, just like we did for our other biological daughters, and so on and so forth. She was kind of afraid of us at first, and then her story began to come out in bits and pieces. I'm going to give you the short version today. Susanna was born in China, adopted by a well-to-do Northern Illinois family at age 4. She was brought to America and abused by those parents. She was kept separated from her siblings, 2 other young girls that were also adopted from China. While they were treated with kindness and love, Susanna was physically, mentally, and emotionally abused. Finally, the mother began to search for places that they could dump her. And I literally mean dump her. And when Susanna was 14, 10 years they had this child in their home. When she was 14, they finally found a woman down here in southern Illinois who would keep her for $400 a month till she turned 18. The woman was to continue Susanna's homeschooling, and other than that, they didn't care one bit what she suffered or how she was treated. After the first 2 weeks, the mother called and told Susanna that for them, she no longer existed. She was dead to them, and they were dead to her. No further communication would ever be necessary, and that was it. She left with nothing but a suitcase to go to Girl Scout camp, and she was dumped in Dix. I don't know if anyone knows where that's at, but it's a little town of about 500 people with nothing. Everything had been stripped away from her. Now, the woman she lived with, I'm going to call her Sarah. She was free to abuse, mistreat, and demean Susanna in any way she chose, and she did just that. She was forced to mow the lawn in the hottest part of the day. She ran miles with this woman following her in the van, honking at her to run faster. She was denied food and water until each and every weed in a huge garden was pulled. And by the time she could get the last half done, the first half already had weeds growing back. Some nights she was given a pillow and she was forced to sleep outside in the cold on a slab of concrete. And at times she stole frozen food from Sarah's freezer. And even more horrifying to me, she sometimes ate scraps that were thrown out to the dogs. She cleaned the woman's house. She helped cook her meals. She even went to work with her, and she'd done the woman's work. She was treated as a slave in that household. And when Sarah had surgery, Susanna was locked out of the house and left to sleep and live in an unheated garage in February for over a week. At night, Sarah's son came home from work, went into the warm house, cooked himself a hot meal, used a toilet, took a bath, and crawled into a warm bed, knowing there was a 18-year-old little girl living outdoors, using the outdoors as a toilet, sleeping on a cold concrete floor in a garage. She was supposed to homeschool Susanna, but there was none. After a first few weeks at the beginning of the 4 years that Susanna was Sarah's slave, they quit. There was no more schooling. Finally, Susanna had had enough, and thoughts of suicide started to become a very real option to her for an escape from her situation. Fortunately for Jerry and I and our family, she trusted God, and she waited on God to change her circumstances. And on a cold day in March, Sarah drove him to Walmart, told Susanna to get out and don't come back. This is it. I'm through with you, and you're on your own. Now, you have to think about that for a second. We're talking about an 18-year-old girl who looked like she was about 14 or 15. She had never been in a schoolroom for more than about 6 months of her life. A young woman that had never heard of Beyonce, which that's really not a bad thing, but how many 18-year-old girls do you know that don't know who Beyonce is? A teen who had never held a cell phone in her hand, had no clue what Facebook was. A scared-to-death kid who had no money, no relatives, and no idea of what to do or where to turn. She eventually decided that if she could contact a lady she had met at a food pantry, maybe that lady would help her. That woman, thank goodness, did. And she's who helped get her into Lifeboat Homeless Shelter. The shelter helped Susanna enroll in GED classes and learn to dress more like an 18-year-old girl would. And when we picked her up on Good Friday, we took her to go get an Easter dress, shoes, and a purse. She told us that was the first time in her life she'd ever had anything that was bought new, specifically just for her. She thought she wore a size 8 shoe, and I don't know why, but this to me was heartbreaking. She was wearing size 8 tennis shoes that looked like something my great-grandma would wear. And actually, she was a size 4.5 or 5. And she had stuffed things in the toes of I don't know why that bothered me, but it did. And when we entered the junior clothing department, she thought they were for little kids. She'd never seen dresses like young girls wear and stuff. That week, we watched American Idol. I'm sorry, I like it. We were watching it, and she's sitting there with me, and she said, "Who are those judges? Are they famous? Do you know who they are?" It was Keith Urban, Jennifer Lopez, and Steven Tyler. Now, Aerosmith, Steven Tyler, I kind of get that she wouldn't know. That's my time. But Keith Urban and Jennifer Lopez, she'd never seen them. She flipped through TV channels one Saturday, and Full House was on, a marathon. She watched Full House all one day. Just thought it was a new show. She'd never seen anything like that. The seclusion that she had suffered was painfully evident in every small detail of our very ordinary lives. When she said she had never been to school, we called Weber High School in Bluford and asked if she could audit classes and have the experience of going to school and being with her peers. They agreed, and she went in as a junior. We encouraged her to do a senior year, and she did. This kid who had never been to school had a 3.97 when she graduated on a 4.0 scale. She began to sing with the praise and worship band. We got her some piano and some voice lessons. We began to show her how to drive a car. All things that most 18-year-olds take for granted, but all new and very exciting to her. She tried out for cheerleading, and she made the team. She tried out for choir. She got to do that. Life opened up for Susanna in a big way. But everywhere we turned, there was one huge obstacle. She didn't have a photo ID. And let me tell you, if you're not a person on paper, you're not a person. You don't exist. The woman who held Susanna for 4 years, if she had killed her and buried her in her backyard, no one would have known. No one would have cared. It was no big deal. She was nobody. We began to search for ways to make it happen, and it became real obvious why God was saying, "Not today, Satan." Thank you so much. Why God was saying, "Not today, Satan," and just exactly why God had placed her in our family. Please don't think I'm name dropping, because I'm not. But it was real obvious why Susanna was put in our family. I have a double first cousin. That's legal. Her mom and my mom are sisters, and her dad and my dad were brothers. So nothing funny going on. It's all good. But that makes her more like my sister than my cousin. Her name is Jo Beth Weber. She's a judge in the 2nd Judicial Court and a resident judge in Jefferson County. Thank God Susanna landed with us. Jo Beth helped us fix up affidavits that we sent to Susanna's parents and this woman, Sarah. I paid Sarah $40 to drive in and sign the affidavit that would verify Susanna's identity. Sorry. The parents begrudgingly signed and returned theirs to the law firm. So armed with those, and I worked for 23, almost 24 years in federally subsidized public housing, and I had helped write leases for HUD. I wrote a lease that I rented her a room in my house. So armed with the affidavits, a lease, and a piece of mail with her grades from Weber High School, we went to the DMV. She took a test, and she got a photo ID. Then she got a driver's license. And a few weeks after that, we could sign her up, and she could take a GED course and take the test, because you can't take a GED final exam until you have an ID. Doors were opened that had been closed on this child for years. A couple at the church where I work. And this is what amazes me about this story. All of the parts. And when you see them looking back, you see why God put her where she was at. A couple at the church where I work, they gave her a car. A 2006 Mercury Mariner. And she could drive herself to school, and that way she had a way when she went to college. We were planning ahead. We were speaking positive stuff into her life. A plan was made with the school officials at Weber High School to allow her to get her GED, and on graduation night, when everyone else walked the stage and got their high school diploma, Susanna would be handed her GED. It was a great plan, we thought. But again, God said, not today. No, Satan, you're not going to win this. Unknown to us, the superintendent, which, not just any superintendent, but the pastor who had performed mine and Jerry's wedding ceremony 38 years before, the principal, and the school guidance counselor, who we knew from 4-H and had guided our youngest biological daughter through high school, they had petitioned the Illinois State Board of Education for Susanna to be allowed to graduate with a high school diploma, not a GED. And as you can see, it was granted. She's now a freshman at Wren Lake. She has a high school diploma, which makes her eligible for more scholarships than she would have been with the GED. That was another blessing. She's engaged to marry a very kind young man. I don't know that he's who I would have chosen for her, but I can say that about all my kids. It was kind of a dumb thing to say. But her life has taken more turns than she ever imagined. God has walked beside her. He's kept his arms full of grace and mercy wrapped around her, and he has blessed her immensely. But even more so, when people hear me telling this story, they start wanting to tell me and tell my husband how awesome we are. No, we're not. We're not awesome at all. The God we serve is awesome. Okay, so now you're all wondering, what does any of that have to do with where I started out? How does that relate back? Well, one night, several months after Susanna became our daughter, Jerry got out of the shower, came to bed, got in, and real excitedly said, he just told me I've done what he wanted me to do. And I sat up in bed real quick and said, what? What did he do? What did you do? What's he going to have you do? And his response, well, it's Susanna. And I said, what? What are you talking about? He said, the me I was before I went on that Emmaus walk would have never dreamed of moving some kid from China with no way to prove who she was into our house. I would have never even considered it. But that's not the end of the story. As we talked that night, how exciting it was when you know what you've done, what God's asking you to do, and you feel the love that he sheds all around you for the purpose that you were made for and that you completed it. We remembered to talk we had had months before we were ever married, 38 years ago. I said to him, I want kids, lots of kids. His response, 40 years before we were blessed with Susanna, was 3 or 4 of our own, and then let's give some kid that needs let's give some kid that needs a good home, a family. A long ago forgotten conversation that became a reality despite the long and winding path our marriage had taken. God revealed our purpose in his world during that long ago conversation. Between 2 starry-eyed kids, we were 19 and 20, that thought they had the world by the tail. To finish this up, I need to tell you that it was through coming to love and know Susanna that we realized we were to be foster parents. So at church one Sunday, we're sitting there, and the kids from Sparrow Family Services, which used to be the United Methodist Children's Home in Mount Vernon, they come every Sunday. And as we sat there, I heard a whisper in my ear. Literally, I thought somebody was sitting beside me whispering in my ear that said, that little black girl there, that's your daughter. So we took her into our home and our hearts, and despite the reality that she cannot function in a normal family, She doesn't live with us now, but she's still our daughter. We visit her regularly. In fact, she's been blowing my phone up today. And we have an important role that we play in her life. And then one day, Sparrow Family Services called and said, could you provide respite care for a 16-year-old Samoan girl that has a nearly 2-year-old daughter? I said, sure, we can let them live with us for a week. I went to pick them up on my lunch break. The moment that young woman turned around, her name's Sky, when she turned around with her little daughter, Mocha, in her arms, I have to tell you something funny about that name. Her real name is Valele, which is a Samoan name. And I said, why do you call her Mocha? And she looked at me and said, duh, have you looked at her? She's brown. I'm like, okay. Makes sense to me. So we call her Mocha because I can't say Valele. Her last name is Le'ele, Valele Le'ele. So I can't hardly say that. She's Mocha. But when she turned around with that baby in her arms, I heard that same voice, and this time it was in my heart, not my ear, and it said, that's your new daughter and your granddaughter. And then most recently, we were asked if a 13-year-old boy could sleep just one night on our couch, just till they could get him into a new foster home. We said, sure, bring him on out. They did, and again. In a still small voice, Jerry heard it this time too, we heard a whisper of, meet your new son. This is Michael. These are kids that Satan is trying to beat down and recruit for his army. And I had no idea if we had any impact on their lives at all. You hope, you pray, but you wonder, are we doing it right? Do they see that we're loving them with the love of Jesus Christ? And you have doubts, and you let them creep in, and you get where you wonder, you know, is this really for me? Am I really supposed to be doing this? Are they seeing Jesus in us? Am I really truly being the hands and feet of Jesus? Little darts of doubt that Satan throws at us, and we let them stick sometimes. But I'm learning day by day to say, not today, Satan. And when recently I for about 4 years been hearing God telling me, I need you in ministry, I need you in ministry. And I'm like, I don't talk in front of people. I'm not good at that. And I'm kind of like Tammy said, I really don't even like people. I have to have medication to get that. Hate to admit it, but I do. But I said to Sky, I feel like God's calling me into ministry. I don't know why he'd choose me. And she looked at me and she said, I do, Mom. I said, why? And she said, because in the 6 months I've lived here, you have shown me more about Jesus Christ than anybody has in the 17 years before. And I thought, wow. So every once in a while, you get that. So let's not allow ourselves to get fatigued doing good. At the right time, we're going to harvest a good crop. And if we don't give up or quit, God's going to win. He's going to be the winner. With or without us, he's going to win. But he sure does want us in his army. So let's work for the benefit of everyone. And let's start with the people closest to us right here in our community of faith. And not care about whether we're Baptist, Methodist, Pentecostal, whatever we are. It doesn't matter. We're all the hands and feet of Jesus Christ. So my prayer for you today is that when folks around us are used to make us angry, when they're used by the devil to hurt us, or when we want to quit and not do the things God's calling us to do, that we see clearly and we say loudly, not today, Satan. Thank you.